2, new business. Council liaisons to boards and committees. This is something that Denise had asked to be placed on the agenda for the 4 different committees that I listed there at her request. Would you like to speak to it, Denise?
Would you like me to make a motion first?
Sure, you can make a motion.
Okay. I would move that that council members volunteer to be a liaison to one of the following boards and or committees: the planning board, zoning board, land trust, or school committee.
Okay, do we need that as a motion?
Well,
No, we need it as a motion.
Yeah, no.
Just requesting volunteers?
okay. That's what I'm requesting. You don't want a motion?
I don't
Do you want me to explain more what I'm looking for?
Sure, explain what you're looking for, and then we'll see if there's volunteers, and if there's a volunteer, we'll make a motion for that
All right.
individual.
I have spoken to the various chairs of those 4 boards and committees, and they agreed that they would like to have someone from the council. I am not looking for it to be restricted that the person who volunteers to be the liaison for that board or committee is the only person that can attend their meetings, obviously, or that they're the only person that can be contacted if there's a concern. But I just feel that I've attended some of the planning board meetings and a zoning board meeting, and at one of the planning board meetings, one of the members was very vocal about the fact that council members do not attend, and I agree. They volunteer their time and services to, and it's, many of them are lengthy, and I think it would be nice that we at least show them the courtesy of showing an interest in being there.
Well, is there anyone interested in acting as a council liaison to the planning board?
I would be.
Denise, okay? Is there a motion?
I don't know that you need a motion for that.
We need a motion to appoint a liaison?
You're not appointed, well, you're actually asked for volunteers.
Okay.
Switch, then you can switch off. If you make a motion, you make a definite thing, then you can't switch off. If somebody else wants to go, if she can't go, she can have someone to go for.
Are you satisfied with that?
I'm satisfied with that.
Says volunteer for the zoning board?
I'll volunteer for that.
Okay. Denise. For the land trust?
I'll take the land trust.
Okay. School committee?
I'll go to the school committee also.
I'm,
You come to the regional meetings also?
I will.
You'll be excited.
I didn't volunteer because doing the agendas and those things at town hall, I feel that's enough to keep me busy. Okay, so Denise for the planning board, school committee, Mr. Estevo for the zoning board, Mr. Rogers for the land trust. That concludes that. Next item, town council news articles for the Foster Home Journal. Again, Mr. Franco, do you want to introduce this?
I'll introduce it. When I was going around speaking to people during the campaign, people were concerned that they don't know what's going on in town, etc. We know the Journal doesn't give us any information. So I spoke to Carol with the Home Journal, and she was quite excited about it. What I would propose is that 2 council members, preferably one from the Democrats and one from either the Republican or the Independent, and stating just the fact, what's on the agenda, how was it voted, nothing political, no hidden agendas, if you will, and that perhaps we could put information there about the boards and what boards still need members and what it entails. So I just thought it might be something to get information out there. Carol was very excited about it. She did request that it be due prior to the deadline that she has, but just so that if she has any questions, she could contact.
Well, I did that in my previous term, and I'd be happy to work on that with whoever.
I'd be happy to do that too.
Is
there a motion on the floor?
Well, we volunteer, we can get a motion now, we know who's interested.
Information-wise, there's no cost, right? with this?
No, I'm
There's no
sorry,
cost.
I shouldn't mention that,
Okay.
there is no
I
cost.
assumed, so.
No, there is no cost.
This
Um,
is not,
she's-
it's not an advertisement,
No.
it's just, it's news.
Yeah, she was quite excited about it.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes, sir.
I think the problem with this community is the lack of a town newspaper and information. I think, obviously, the idea is good. One Republican, one Democrat. The agenda, the votes is informational. But, you know, everybody talks about politics like it's a bad thing. And what's left after the vote is the lack of the reason why there was such a vote by a certain party. And I'm saying party individual versus Republican or Democrat. And the lack of information in this community is probably one of the biggest problems we have. Why we don't move forward in any direction. So I'm not disagreeing with Denise's. I like Denise's proposal. I remember when you wrote the article singularly, John, they were to one point. I remember Mr. Whitelaw wanted to write opposition articles, and Carol McCullough wouldn't accept them. But I do think she likes the Good News newspaper, and I really think at some point the people in this community need to know the bad news. So I don't know how you solve that problem.
Well,
right?
I did speak to Carol about that, because she was concerned that
Yes,
it
it
would
should
be, and she's a businesswoman, she doesn't want to lose, she was losing advertisements because there was going to be bickering back and forth.
She's,
So it's my understanding as well, she's reluctant to publish things that are really politically charged. She wants like the Dragnet, just the facts, man.
well, you know, it's nice what she wants, all right? And, you know, she's gonna do as a service supposedly, and this is a start, but the lack of, I'm gonna say it again, information, and her reluctance to do politics. It's not politics for John. I know you sat there sometimes, I'm not being critical, and voted no while the rest of the council voted yes. You had a strong feeling about why you voted that way, and you voiced it. I honestly think you two should negotiate with her. It's not political, it's reasoning and how you arrived at it. So it's nice to know what she wants,
Well,
but
it's
she
her
owes, well, no, you know it is, okay, but she wants our money to take her, to run her paper. So you do what you want, I'm just telling you, the biggest problem this town has is the lack of information. So how you handle it, that's up to you.
You need a formal motion for that, or is the council okay with this? Just
Got a
going
hand?
forward? Mr. Walden.
It pains me to agree with Mr. Savazio.
You know, everybody says that, but everybody was reason.
It pains him to agree with Mr. Sabazia.
Miss Colette Matarese used to say that too. Where's she now?
Well, certainly, she's the editor, so she's gonna have the last say, we'll.
Maybe baby steps. Maybe if we get a good response and people want to know and start questioning her and asking her, maybe we can expand upon it.
I mean, I'll go with that. I'm speaking from somebody who's not a Democrat or a Republican, and ran as an independent, so, kind of out of the fray.
Boy, I'll say.
As I
That's
pause for a
beautiful.
minute. I like the baby step statement, because it can turn into something political. Especially, it's frustrating when you have I know before they discuss, before it goes, I mean, even if it's a little bit of old news, it's still news. Even if it kind of gets emailed to everybody, this is what we're gonna send. And just respond back, I'm good with that, I'm good with that.
You, we know for a
Responding to
fact.
an email to the clerk.
Yes,
Okay.
email it to the
Yeah,
clerk and
okay.
then send it out.
She sends us all emails all the time.
One way, certainly.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, if somebody, whatever two you wanna pick, sends it to the clerk sends the final draft, the email to us, and we just respond back, good to go, then off it can go.
Can I raise a point just as somebody who's seen these in other newspapers and other small communities? You know what they had a journalistic program in Johnston at one point, and they let a student do reporting. And then the student could interview people on a vote. And maybe she would accept something like that.
I see how the Providence Journal portrays the journalism.
I'm talking student, not journal.
I know the high school would participate.
You know, maybe a young person who's interested in journalism.
So if you guys want to propose that, I'll definitely work on the high school, putting somebody forward, that's up to you.
Now, would they attend the meeting, so they, you know, and that's a big commitment too.
And you'll be the editor.
Everybody knows.
I know 2 councils ago, there was quite an issue about it, and at one point, well, as a last-ditch effort to try to get some kind of agreement, Carol would email each individual council member with what was before her to go in the paper, and if every single one of those council members did not sign off, this is Carol McCullough, did not sign off to Carol McCullough, she would not run it.
That would be okay if it's a yes or
Consequently,
no.
there was nothing there.
If it was a yes or no,
That
without
was
any
just
more
the
than
right
yes
one.
or no, we run
No,
a
no,
risk
no.
of.
No, it was just a yes or no to Carol. Carol McCullough would email
Pat
what
would
she
respond
got.
to Carol.
I don't, her being involved doesn't
No, no, no.
alleviate a problem, but if
Right,
the
but it was
answer is
just a
yes or no.
yes or no, but it just always ended up being mixed, so they never got put in.
As I said, my idea was that it'd be 2 members get, and just state the facts, and maybe it'll go expand and we can get further. But right now, she wasn't receptive to that, but I can understand that.
She will take my $386 when I write one of my articles.
That's a good businesswoman.
I think this is fine, I'd like to do this, I'm reluctant to having the article circulate to the whole council and having everybody weigh in on it or say yes or no, just worried that's gonna create an issue.
Yes.
And then if 2 folks do it, then there's not an issue. If 2 folks do it, and the council doesn't like the outcome, then
It can be an agenda item.
we can make an agenda item to deal with it then. Deal with it publicly as opposed to passing an article back and forth. And I'd like to try it that way. If there's a problem, then we'll address that problem. If we do it times 5, I just think we're gonna end up risking an open meetings infraction.
What I had said was send it to the clerk emails, like I said, us stuff all the time when we respond back to her. There is no open meetings, I mean, you can portray that, but that's not the case if the clerk gets it, emails us, and we respond to her.
But there's human nature, and I'm 4-0 just with you,
Yeah.
so I am gonna speak to that. There's human nature to say, no, I don't like it, and this is why. And she's busy, and she might go to one other person and say, Gordon doesn't like this because.
Well, no,
and now we
it
have
ends at that
started.
point. I mean, if they're pretty generic and they're just to the facts, I don't think anybody will have a problem with it. Most of the time it'll be yes. And if there's one no, it doesn't get put in.
Oh, no. No, that's the problem, Gordon. All right, you need to get some, I didn't mean to start this, all right? Denise has the perfect start to something. Let's not go to the Neil White law, we never write anything.
But I did say I would agree with John on that way as a start.
All right, so we'll do it one step at a time. We'll do a month. And if someone wants to put it on the agenda to discuss it, we'll get it on the agenda to discuss it and take it one step at a time. So the first, her deadline is the 20th. She's
Her
gonna
deadline-
want something by what, the 17th? So that's this week.
Yes.
Do we want a motion to have us do it, or is everyone comfortable with us doing it and addressing it at a future meeting? Okay.
Say it's within the council's purview to even do this, I don't think it's a public way.
Okay, very good. So Denise, we'll chat afterwards and try to set up a time. Okay, do you have something else?
No, I just wanted to say, could you include a police component? Because so many people in this town think that our police department doesn't do anything. And yet you know, because you get the monthly reports, that, you know, there are hundreds of calls during a month.
I think
And
that's
there's all
fair.
kinds of things going on that I think they should get credit for. Sorry.
That's certainly true.
Huh?
Just gave him another job.
I know, and that's why I'm not looking at.
I mean, to incorporate something in a paragraph that, you know, and this is what happened at the police station.
The police blotter of the month.
You might want
I don't think I want to
Yeah,
list
we're not
people's
going that
names.
to, you might want to include the town website. Most people should know how to Google the town website, but if people want more information, they should know that they can go to the town website and read the minutes, then they can get more information from the minutes.
List the web addresses.
Yeah, and maybe
Good
even
point.
specify that they can go on and read minutes from any of the boards.
There are minutes.
Mhm.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, anything else? Okay, concerned citizens as a town council agenda item. Mr. Franco again asked for this to be put on, if you
I
could
did.
introduce it.
As you know, in the past, there has been concerned citizens, and then the last council, there was none, and people were, again, when I was going around, people were, concerned that there was no concerned citizens. So I have a couple of things that I would propose as the concerned citizens, that if we do go back to that it would be at the beginning, right after the pledge or before the warrants, that it would not be a dialogue between citizens and citizens, or between citizen and council, that'd be limited for 1 minute approximately, or we could have it longer, it depends. I just threw that out there. 1 minute doesn't seem long, but. Can speak a second time once everyone else has spoken. Certainly no repeats. That'd be respectful and professional. That if there is something that needs to be addressed, it'd be a future agenda item. And that if the rules are not followed, then the meeting will adjourn until decorum is brought back, or those causing the disturbance have left the room.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
I'm gonna speak to this, why we need concerned citizens. And actually, you're my target.
Wonderful.
I spoke to you over a course of 4 years about the necessity to move the signs that pointed to different places. You and I spoke to 2 highway directors, and they still never got moved. But I never got to speak to the council and inform all the council members that people's lives were in danger. And finally, Joe Cardillo fixed it.
So,
All right, he fixed it because the highway guys told him it needed to be done. So the first thing is, there's a breakdown of citizens speaking directly to you, which is what you wanted. And I once asked to get on the agenda through Mr. Franco, and you didn't allow that to happen.
Then what was that item?
That was that item. It was about the signs.
Oh,
Okay?
because we addressed it. We stood there together and talked to Mr. Holden.
And it never got done. All right? So what would happen as a concerned citizen you would stand up and say, you know, Mr. Lewis, you and I spoke to Mr. Holler, and it didn't get done. All right? So I could keep bringing it up. The second issue is over the printer house. I called you to try and get the printer house bought. You had already spoken to the board and didn't get 3 votes. But when I spoke publicly, you allowed me on the agenda, and I spoke publicly, you went back in and got your 3 votes. So a lot of times, things that go on politically between your group, works negatively for the town. The printer house should have been bought, and all 5 members should have voted for it. Okay? So not allowing the citizens to address things that affect the future of this community, and thinking you yourself should be in charge of all things. And you do good things too. But,
That's nice to know.
I just wanted to give you, one little laugh.
Throw you a bone.
All right? The idea is that 5 people need to hear from a citizen who's concerned about an issue of health, safety, and welfare, and the future of the community. That printer house should have never been lost. That was the center of town. And you couldn't get 5 votes, or 3 votes. But when I spoke, I got 3. And I had to ask you to get on the agenda, which you never let anybody on the agenda. So, Mr. Restivo, I'm gonna ask you.
That's not true.
I took the phone back. So, Mr. Restivo, I'm gonna ask you. Concerned Citizens has not been allowed under Mr. Lewis's chairs, and I'm gonna hope that you allow citizens to properly address the community, because we don't have any kind of newspaper and information that goes around only when somebody comes into this room and they bring their concern forward. And it all shouldn't go through the chair. It should go to, I have 5 council people, and I should be able to call any one of you, especially now that we have liaisons, to the issue that I choose to address. And Mr. Lewis would not let anything on the agenda. John, I'll ask Mr. DeFranco to back me on this, all right? Unless you said it.
All right, John, just for the sake of getting this going,
I need to respond to him.
well,
I need to respond to him.
I think John.
Yes, I need to respond to him. This is an agenda, this is an agenda item.
just for 1 second, I'd like to make a motion to add this to the agenda.
I said that I'm going to respond to Mr. Savasio, whose comments were fairly full of erroneous misinterpretations.
And then after you're done with that, I would like to make the motion.
And I will certainly entertain that. Anything that anyone ever asked to get put on the agenda was put on the agenda or dealt with. There are some things that don't need to be put on the agenda because they can be directed right to a department head. You don't need council action to fix a sign. You don't need council action to plow a road. You don't need council action to do many things. It can go right to the department head, and that's where it would get directed on that.
We spoke to Howard,
I
we
said I'm
spoke
not-
to Harry, it never got done.
Well, I'm not going to talk about employees. The reason that this is a potential minefield, that when something is brought up from the audience, if the council, and it's not on the agenda, it's a concern, and the council makes any comment, any action, say, I'll take care of those signs, Mr. Savasio, under concerned citizens. Now we're in a potential problem with the Open Meetings Act, because now the council has taken an action. We have actually had somebody from the audience who raised something under concerned citizens, that the council then tried to address that concern, and then that person turned around and filed an open meetings complaint against this town.
Mr. Lewis,
And
it's
I
illegal
am
for
not
you to
willing,
address.
excuse me, I am not willing to put this town at risk, and I haven't been. Anything that needs to be said can be said here, can be put as an agenda item appropriately. Now, when Mrs. DeFranco asked for this to be put on the agenda, I started to query other cities and towns. Find out what do the other cities and towns do? Does everyone else in Rhode Island do it? If everyone else in Rhode Island does it, then maybe we should do it. We haven't heard back from them. We've heard back from some that do it. And they have very specific rules, and she was laying out some of them. When it occurs, how long they get to speak, what the total time is for all speakers. They're very specific, concrete rules. And I may be comfortable putting this back on the agenda with concrete rules that don't subject this council or this town to open meetings complaints that open us up to financial fines from the Secretary of State's office. It's about protecting the town. As much as you say you want to protect the town, so do I. But if you have a concern, you don't have to just go through me. You can talk to anybody. The town clerk, you talk to anybody. And I've never denied anybody to put something on the agenda it gets addressed.
With that being said, I would like to make a motion to add concerned citizens to the agenda with the guidelines that Denise had mentioned.
Is there a second?
Second.
Now, I'd like to add to that, as somebody who sat on the council in your position, John, for 2 years with concerned citizens on it, it is very hard to control it. There were times that I've had to take some drastic measures with some people to control the outbursts. But I think it, being the small town we have in a community, we're not like Providence and North Providence, we pretty much know almost everybody by their first name, which adds to the problems too, I must say. But it also adds to our uniqueness that I think this is sorely missed off of the agenda, and I'd love to see it back up. And with the position of the chair you have, it's incumbent on you to control it, and I think you can do that well.
I also have a comment, John, and it's the same comment I made 2 years ago. You're concerned about the open meetings violations. I think the people on the council have more self-control. I give them credit that they would be able to sit quietly and not respond to citizens provoking, and we know that they will provoke.
Yep.
But it's human nature. But I do think that we as adults and as council members realize that we have to bite our tongue and we have to sit quietly and have it be a future agenda item. I feel strongly about having concerned citizens back on the agenda.
I understand. I don't know who raised their hand first, but should be, Mrs. Wright.
No, I would just perhaps add to your list of rules that a citizen, I don't think that they can single out a town employee and make a complaint.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, that, you know, they probably would have some kind of legal recourse. Also, you know, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, because if someone says it, it is on the camera, it's going on to public access TV, and quite frankly, that's too late. My other concern is that, and maybe you could ask the solicitor, is that, you know, when people have a concern, they expect an answer. How much of an answer can the chair give? Can it be, we will look into that, we will put it on another agenda? How far can someone go? I will speak to so-and-so about that. I mean, how far can you go without it being an open meeting violation? I mean, I just don't know.
Mrs. Walden?
Linda Walden, Central Pike. This item is actually the only reason I'm here this evening. I didn't realize it was going to be on the agenda till like 6:50. I'm not just concerned that there's a lack of citizens' participation items on the agenda. I am outraged. Because theoretically, in the municipal world I work in, we shouldn't even be allowed to talk now because you have a council motion on the table. And all the discussion should be limited to the council. However, if you have a citizens' participation or concerned citizens item at the top of the agenda with certain rules, and for example, where I work, the citizens' participation can be no longer than 40 minutes total unless extended by a majority vote of the council. Each member of the public that gets up to speak has 3 minutes, and they time you. So if you're not done in 3 minutes, you don't keep talking. You're allowed to look down the agenda and say, you're going to be talking tonight about, plowing the roads. This is my opinion on plowing the roads or doing something about that issue. And that's it, it's a statement. You could ask a question. In that particular agenda, there's actually a follow-up item called Town Manager Council Response. And again, council isn't taking action, voting, doing anything that you have to have it on the agenda. It's just if the town manager happens to know the answer to the question, he can answer it. If the Department of Public Works Director is there and they suspend the rules so he's allowed to talk, he can answer the question. Done, over with. You don't have to hold it out for a whole other month to get it on the agenda to answer somebody's questions. So I think that there's definitely a line between what you can discuss as an agenda item for freedom of information and what you can just give plain old information on when somebody raises an issue. And theoretically, that citizens' participation is the only time during the entire meeting the public has the right to speak, unless Robert Rules orders suspended, the rules, unless the council policy and procedures is suspended, or there's a public hearing duly advertised for everybody in town that has an interest, wants to come and speak on that topic. And I just think it is an outrage that you can't go to a meeting except for the very good graces of who happens to be council president at that time, deciding to allow the public to speak. And that's my outrage, and I'm very glad that a council person brought up this issue.
So you are advocating, if I could clarify, you're advocating putting concerned citizens on, letting people speak under that item, but then not for the rest of the meeting.
And that is how business gets done in a decorum, very efficient manner from start to finish under the guidance of the council president at the time. Yes. Because I should not be speaking now, because you have a council member, seriously, you have a council member that made a motion, and you're allowing public input when a council motion is only discussed among council members. I'm just bringing that up.
Mrs. Rice?
No, I mean, I understand, but that seems to counter the intent of concerned citizens because you want citizen participation. And a lot of times, reading an agenda, you may not even quite understand what that is going to entail completely until the president gives some kind of an explanation. And so I think that is one of the things that is unique about Foster, is if something comes up, you can ask a question.
We allow a large amount of public participation. All night long is conversation with the public. It's not that the public is not allowed to speak.
It's your good graces that's allowing that. Another council member may say, no, not at all. And then the public has no opportunity to speak unless you duly advertise a public hearing that people know this topic's important, come and give your opinion.
Okay, well, I appreciate your opinion. I've looked into it with the other cities and towns. I'm reluctant to support this, and I don't intend to support this evening until I receive more information and see in concrete writing what the other towns do to try to make the best possible set of rules. I'm not going to support this evening. Mr. Savasio?
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on Ms. Walden's conversation of how she thinks the meeting should be run. This is Foster, and what Denise is bringing forward is concerned citizen. Let me show you a concern, okay? If we had this. We had voting at the Woody Loudon. It was dark at 5 o'clock. People were falling in. I got calls of my next door neighbor who fell in the hole because there's no lights. So if you had concerned citizens, see, I would stand up and say such a thing of how you're going to fix the voting place for the next time. That's if you had concerned citizens.
I've directed to the chairman of the board of canvassers who heard you and can look into it.
I'm sure he's working on it right now.
Any further comments?
I do agree that you give people a chance to speak on agenda items, but there are concerns that are not always on the agenda, and this is the place that the people get to tell us their concerns. So.
Well, I've been clear for the past 2 years. Is there any further discussion?
I would like to say that I do think that in general, there's too much apathy. Anything that encourages participation and discussion, I think, should be promoted, should be definitely encouraged. from the public participation, I think, is what drives representative democracy. However, I do think that the particular rules that Denise mentioned, for instance, the 1 minute time limit,
Yeah,
I don't know if Ron could get through his first one in a minute. I also questioned having it at the beginning instead of the end, although Ms. Walden's comments seem to indicate that that was a positive thing to have it at the beginning. So I would like to give some consideration to sort of the rules, but I think the concept is a good one and should be included.
thank you, and those rules are just rules that, I'll be honest, I spoke with Bob Boyden and said, what would you suggest? Because I think he does a nice job running as town moderator, and those were the suggestions he had. Certainly up for discussion. I just felt that there's a need for concerned citizens on the agenda.
Well, still, I want to hear what the other towns are doing, and see what the other towns are doing. What's tried and true and tested and has passed legal muster.
Well, there is a motion. and-
There is a motion, I'm making my opinion, and
Again,
again, I tend to do that, yes. I like clarity. So, but if you'd like, I will call for the vote. All those in favor of this motion, signify by saying aye.
aye.
Aye, opposed? Nay. Nay?
Can I clarify, the motion was to approve having it on the agenda with the rules that
With
you...
her rules, that was the motion.
Could I make a motion to amend?
Now, we already started to vote, John. I think you have to vote. If you want to have a different motion after we vote, you can, but you should have amended before we took the vote.
All right.
Please.
All right, I'll abstain from this, and we can put on a different motion then.
Okay, so if you are abstaining, then that motion fails, 2, 2, and 1. Is there a further motion?
I would make a motion to add concerned citizens as a standing agenda item with such rules to be determined by the council at a later date.
So to clarify, it would be added after the rules are defined?
Yes,
It wouldn't be added immediately at the next meeting without any rules?
right.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay. Discussion?
Yeah, why can't we kind of hash out the rules right now?
Right.
I think 5 great minds here can come up with something that we can agree on. Basically, what we have here is leaning towards doing the right thing for the citizens and letting them speak, just the parameters, and I think the parameters can go over pretty quick. Could you restate what parameters you had as suggestions, Denise?
I could. Is that all right with you, John?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
No, I'm not
In the beginning, to have it right at the beginning, after the pledge, before the warrants, that it would not be a dialogue, no discussion between citizens or citizens and council. It's a statement of the facts. Okay. Limited time, again, I threw out 1 minute, but I'm open to whatever. Can speak a second time once everyone else has spoken. That there should be no repeats, that you're saying again, clarifying, if you will, what someone had said previously. That it would be respectful and professional, that any of the topics or concerns could be a future agenda item. I heard Renee shaking her head when Linda was mentioning about the council response, that could not be an agenda item, so I'm thinking it could be a future agenda item. And that if the rules, this is the one that I like the most, if the rules are not followed, then the meeting will adjourn until decorum is brought back and those causing the disturbance have left the room.
Okay,
Can't use the word adjourned.
to speak to those, I think they're all good, and I think you did mention leeway, and any council president, you're gonna notice your meetings when you got 100 and something people out there. I was at a public meeting this afternoon, we had 2 minutes to speak. 2 minutes may seem like a little bit, but it's really not. I mean, how many meetings, it seemed like a lot. And it takes a while to speak for 2 minutes, except for Ron. But I think there's times where you'll know that it may be able to go beyond that, and that would be the purview of the council to say, we can move it. But I think those basic guidelines are pretty good, and I don't see any problem with them all. I mean, does anybody else have a problem with those guidelines?
John, what would your, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I have seen, I've seen some of the towns with their rules, they're concrete, and they allow not only a limit on an individual, but they allow a maximum time period for the whole thing. So that if we were at a council meeting and we had 300 people show up and everyone got 2 minutes to speak, you couldn't do business.
Right, so
So-
Mrs. Walden's comment of 40 minutes
Well,
might not be good for us, but maybe a 20-minute max. That doesn't mean it has to go to 20 minutes.
could I add that today? Today there was a meeting with 200 to 300 people that showed up. That's really only a time where you're gonna wanna say, hey, and they had business to get to. And what they did was, they allowed, like I said, everybody 2 minutes, and 1 hour was given for that time. And after 1 hour, that was it. And as the people came in, we used to have a concerned citizen sheet you signed up for. And they did the same thing today. I would like to see that back. At the end of the meeting, or the beginning of the meeting, we went down the list. And you could set the timeline, and if there's 150 people, we have the prerogative to say, we're gonna get through 1 minute each person, and we're gonna get where we're gonna get, and we can set it up at that point. So I'd like to see the list come back where we sign, the president goes down the list, and they speak. So, and at any given time, you can set a limit when we see a lot of people. I mean, you're not gonna set a 1 hour limit when you got 2 people on there, concerned citizens.
Well, I think there needs to be a maximum in case 100 people do sign up. I mean, it's not likely.
I've seen it.
But that would extend if we wanted to.
Yes.
do it.
Yep.
I think 20 minutes.
And it doesn't make your life easy, John, I know that. But you're council president.
Right, it's after that, you have the tools in your toolbox to
If
do
I
it.
wanted an easy life, why would I have even run?
Right.
Can I bring up a few things from my legal perspective?
Before
It's
you
not
do-
about
But
time.
before you do, when I asked for John, I meant John Restivo.
Oh, okay, okay.
But I understand, John, why you would think it would be you. Mr. Restivo, maybe I'll just refer to you as Mr. Lewis, Mr. Restivo. Mr. Restivo, what were your concerns, or what would you like to see added?
Well, I did think that the 1 minute was too short. Sounded like 2 minutes. You felt that was a reasonable, I think 2 minutes is pretty reasonable. The overall time limit as well. I think 20 minutes, keep things moving fairly efficiently. The adjournment, I don't think that we can necessarily adjourn
We have to
and then
recess.
bring the meeting back. And then I would question also kicking someone out of the meeting.
It wasn't, that was what it was specifically to avoid, is that the council president did not have to have someone removed, but that the meeting would stop, maybe adjourn is not the correct
I
word,
think
Recess.
but recess until whoever is, the decorum is brought back, or the person who is causing this disturbance leaves on their own. Not to avoid having the police have to escort somebody out. That doesn't put the president in a position to ask for someone to be removed, and it doesn't put the police in a position to have to remove somebody, and it doesn't put the person who's causing the disturbance have to be removed. So that was that was the one that Bob Whiting gave me, and I thought that was a good one, and maybe adjourn is the wrong wording, maybe recess.
It has to be recessed. If it's adjourned, it means the meeting's over. You can't
Mhm.
adjourn.
Maybe we could hash that out.
Can I point out a difference between financial town meeting and this meeting though? His subject matter is strictly limited. This meeting isn't, and that's one of my concerns. One of the biggest things we have is personnel issues. And I would not want to see names or a job description that singles someone out, or a character assassination, and we know it's happened. Anybody who's been here knows it's happened. There's a lot of information going on in the audience sometimes, and I don't think you're gonna stop human nature from people trying to respond. So write about personnel type things being mentioned. Maybe we can say, off limits for names or something that you can identify somebody with. Property acquisition, the example that he used, that may have very well been an item on, say, an executive session. So it's not fair to attack a council member saying, you didn't listen to me, when maybe that was part of an executive session, because property acquisition or sale is not something you're gonna discuss. Because once you tip people off, you're gonna get that property anyway. So those things are not discussed and should not be discussed for the benefit of the town. Contracts, whether it's police, dispatchers, paving, I don't know, anything like that, because again, one, you can infringe on someone's right, you could change a bid, you could make a comment that somebody relies on, those are all actionable things. So those are my areas, not so much time or order, but subject matter. I think personnel, contracts, property acquisition are things that we shouldn't even discuss in the open.
When I sat on the school committee years ago, our solicitor, Greg Piccirilli, is he still up there, Ron?
No. He's at the grade school.
Okay. We had something on the regional agenda that was concerned citizens, and he actually advised not to have it. And he said, what you do is you open yourself up to anything you cannot. You could put a rule saying you can't talk about an employee, but once it's an open forum, it's a concerned citizen who then has the right to say, that's not a valid concern, and shut it down. That opens you up to a different type of difficulty. Now, there was one town that actually had a set of rules, a little more comprehensive than this, that they actually post on their agenda. It says, I don't think they call it concerned citizens, I think they called it open forum. But there are a couple of different terms. And they listed that, and then there was very specific bullets that were listed, very specific rules, and they appeared on every agenda, and they appeared on the, on the agendas that were posted at the Secretary of State's office, so there was no question what the rules were, and it controlled it.
You could have something like that
A little
with the
bit more.
sign-up sheet. I was thinking, actually, teacher and me coming out, having a whiteboard and having the rules up so everyone could view them, as you do in a classroom, with these are the rules of the classroom, and have that up. But I thought that was too
If
teacher.
they're in the back of the room and I'm not wearing my glasses, it's just gonna look at what?
Putting it on the agenda is a good alternative.
I think responding, and I sat on the council when it was on there for 2 years, and many times we refused to answer. And what the solicitor was speaking about is actually coming out how we respond. I mean, they can pretty much say what they want, the toothpaste is off and everything else, but the oming does not happen until we respond incorrectly. And we should be tutored enough to know what we can and cannot respond to. And it's pretty much, I've been involved a long time, so I think I know where the line is. And you really don't have to respond, but it gives the opportunity for the citizens to get something off their chest. Like the parking lot, the Woody Love and stuff like that. And I think it's a good thing. And again, we just have to be responsible on how we respond. And I think I'm definitely up to that challenge on, how far we can respond, how far we can't, speaking for myself.
Can I just deal with that? When he used that example, was that something you wanted to say after it happened or prior to it
It
happening?
depends on when he realized it. He didn't realize it till after he voted after.
Okay, my point is, if that concerns, just as an example, came up and he said, I heard that Woody Loudon is gonna have voting, I know for a fact there's no lights, we've had trouble years ago, whatever it is, you just put the town on notice, and if somebody falls, man, that's an easy
I
fix.
agree with you, but the same thing by telling Mr. John Lewis one-to-one outside is the exact same thing. He has just notified
Just
a
don't
council
think
member.
it's putting the
He
whole.
hasn't told me anything about that until this evening.
No, the example I'm using is, you can make the same argument as he's walking out the door.
Yeah, but John Lewis isn't the town, neither are you alone, or Mr.
What I'm
Frankel
saying
alone.
is, the argument is still there on that.
It's an argument, I'm sure you made. But my thing is, if they're telling the whole council on the record, on television, certainly I wouldn't have a prayer defending a bridge, defending a building, defending a street, defending a director from something.
It's public safety. It
Mr.
should be.
Lewis,
That's
can
all.
we get the attorney to give a legal opinion and, you know?
That is my.
I think that was a legal
All right,
opinion.
so, you know, we
She
heard,
said that would expose her to something
We've
she
heard
couldn't
it.
possibly defend. I think that was a legal opinion. Mrs. Ryder?
I think that the intent is good to hammer it out tonight, I just don't think that's possible, just because there's a lot of issues that haven't even been brought forward. I would suggest that maybe Mr. Franco, maybe Mr. Restivo, because he had some concerns, and the solicitor sit down and hash out some rules that the solicitor would be comfortable with, and really let you know how far you can go. And, and see if you can come to some kind of a consensus. So I don't think you're gonna do that tonight.
Mr. Lewis? Mr. Savasio, go ahead.
yeah, I just wanted to point out, the grade school, the chair at the grade school has concerned citizens before. At the region, I have concerned citizens after, because I see concerned citizens as informing the council of something, and if they choose to put it on the next agenda, that's where it would be, all right? I don't really care where it is, I'm just saying, before, my chair at the grade school has her reason, my chair at the region is me being chair at the region is something else. After, then we have the ability to say, do we want that on the next agenda, all right? The concerns of the solicitor are correct, but truthfully, everybody, you all know you're not supposed to address a citizen under concerned citizens. The school committee's been informed, and Mr. Petrelli at a different time changed his opinion. Attorneys tell their clients what they tell them they want, and they defend those actions.
Mrs. Walden?
Second go-round, I'll make it short. I do believe it's important where it is on the agenda. If it's at the end of the meeting, the citizen is only given an opportunity to say, I disagreed with your vote. If it's at the beginning of the agenda and it's coming up for a decision, the person can state, when you get to item 435, I believe you should support this item because you can state them. And perhaps, obviously, they're giving you their opinion before you take your vote. You are our representatives. So I think it is important where in the agenda it appears. There have been councils in the past that did have it at the end of the agenda. What good does it do? It does no good, the meeting's over. So I think it's important.
I think that's why we allow conversation during the meeting.
At your good grace.
But when was the last time someone was stopped by any council? So, is this set of rules in conjunction with Mrs. Walton's proposal? If we put this at the top of the agenda, that's when people speak and people don't speak any further throughout the rest of the agenda?
I don't know if there's part of that.
Oh, well, that's what I'm asking, I want to clarify. That's not.
Mrs. Walden doesn't get to make a motion.
I don't think that had
Clarify,
anything.
Mr. Savasio.
Under the motion that I understood on the floor, talking the rules, I don't think that had any part of it. It was just pretty much putting it at the beginning of the agenda. I
Well,
did
we're
that.
hammering out the rules, remember?
No, I wouldn't like to see that nobody talks through,
That's what I'm asking. So that's not part of this.
in my opinion. I'm just going.
And I think I pointed that out, that you allow them to speak, but there are other concerns that might not be on the agenda. They're speaking to the agenda items.
Further discussion?
The only thing I like to add is the list. People sign up when they come in.
I put that down.
And
Trying to
I
recall
think
exactly what that motion
Mr. Restivo
was.
said-
After all of this discussion, I'm trying to recall exactly what that motion was.
The motion was to add concerned citizens as a standing agenda item, and I said with rules to be determined and agreed upon at a later date.
Which point would you just get? I didn't mention hashing it out tonight, which I think we did.
I would suggest that we actually draft those up, get them together, Denise and I can actually put them to paper and adopt the rules formally.
Thank you, at the next meeting.
That sounds like a separate motion.
Well, no, actually,
That sounds like
it sounded like the original motion.
Who's making the motion?
No,
He's
John
restating his
is
motion.
making the motion.
Go ahead.
Let him make one, will you?
He did, you know what it was?
Yes, I know.
Add as a regular agenda item with the rules to be determined at a later date. And then you wanted to determine the rules this evening. And we talked about that for a little while. My understanding is, of that motion, if we're adding it as a regular agenda item, and I think we said this before, it doesn't get put on until the rules are
Listen, I
adopted.
kind of like discussing it tonight because you have all of our impact on it. So
Did
with
you-
what we discussed tonight, I think would work in well with his suggestion.
I'm not clear if we're putting this on the next meeting's agenda. Is concerned citizens, is, if this motion passes,
I would recommend that it be put on, not the following agenda item, well, concerned citizen be an agenda item, not for our discussion. John and I, Mr. Restivo and I would sit down and hammer out these rules. At that meeting, we can look at those rules and then have it be on future agenda items as a stand-in.
So
That's
consensus
not
would
clear as
be
mud.
on the
so
next-
approving this motion then allows rules to be formulated, to be brought back, to be discussed.
Discussed, right, not to have it
Not
be,
to have it as an agenda
Not
item,
to
just to
be-
formulate rules.
right, to form it, but to have it be an agenda item for discussion as a council member,
Council discussion.
not as
Right, and under old business.
under old business.
Is that your intent with the motion? Would you agree with that? Yep. You agree with that? Who seconded that? You seconded.
Gordon did.
Gordon seconded that? Your comment, Mrs.
I just have a question. I think before we had public comment at the beginning, which was could only be about something on the agenda.
Mhm.
And frequently, the chair would say, you can speak to that when we get to that item.
Mhm.
But then concerned citizens was at the end where, there's a tree leaning over, our road at such and such an point, or, something like that. So this is a combination of both of them at the beginning of the meeting? Is this a combination of speaking to what's on the agenda plus any
I think
other
that's-
concerns you have?
I don't
I mean,
want
it's
to
just
speak
throwing
for
that out there.
Mr. Lewis, but it's my understanding that our motion is just for concerned citizens and that we would continue with, as the
Okay.
agenda items, people could speak to that. That was my understanding.
It's my understanding that
Okay.
that the rules for concerned citizens will be drafting rules to allow the public to speak to non-agenda items. At the top of the agenda, or wherever you, the rules set. Well, my biggest concern is that we take into account the input of the other towns. I do have a package of that information to see what they're doing. We're going to.
Oh, I thought you said they had responded. So I was gonna.
Some,
Okay.
they have all responded. I think I have 5 or 6.
Great.
And I'll get you those. So you consider those in your formulation of the rules, then I don't have a problem with going forward.
John, could you find out how many of those towns have newspapers that put out news to the community?
No, but I would be happy if
Why don't
we
you
could do
add
that.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great, and you can report back to us at the next meeting.
Okay.
So,
We'll be fine
I gotta
about
know
how
what
many
towns
times
respond
it's
to
fine.
it.
there are 39. Check them all. Mrs. Rogers?
Can I just ask, because you guys went back and forth so much, is this, when you vote on this motion, does that make an agenda item concern citizens with rules to be discussed and adopted later in the meeting? Does it set concerned citizens as an agenda item,
Let me
but
try
the
to-
rules are going to be?
Let me try to state what I understand, and then you can
Well,
say
it was
if I'm not
Mr.
correct.
Restivo's motion, so
Okay,
That the motion was to add to the agenda an item that says concerned citizens.
right.
at this point, they're gonna formulate rules, and that's what the council will discuss under that item. So when it appears on the next agenda, it won't be open forum for the public.
No, right.
It will be setting and adopting the formal written rules that
Okay.
these folks put together.
Okay, that's how I
Is
understood.
that correct?
It'd be Mr. Restivo's motion, so,
Yeah, that's accurate, yes.
And you seconded it,
no, Mr. Rogers did.
and you did. Is that accurate?
Yep, that's how I understood it.
Okay, all right. Any further discussion? All those in favor of making this a future agenda item with rules to be considered and adopted at subsequent meetings, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. Okay, so we'll
Thank
have
you.
this on a subsequent agenda, and I'll give you, both of you, the stuff that I've gotten from the other towns.
Thank you.
I'll be satisfied if we are not in harm's way. That's, I have to be satisfied. Okay, old business, there were 3 appointments that we discussed at the last meeting. We didn't have folks. I think we may have at least one or a couple of these at this point. Appointment of tree warden.
If I may speak, tree warden, that's the one that needs the arborist license, right?
That's correct.
I did speak to somebody who has a license, a state license 249. I don't know if he's contacted the town hall, he's been kind of busy, but he's a town resident, holds it, actually held the position before, and has a license number given to him by the state. We're just waiting for him to turn in the paperwork for the town to request that he's interested in it. On the quarter of wood, we had discussed Bob Thurman, who held it in the past. I did speak to him. I'm actually going to be seeing him Sunday. Do you want something in writing from him? I can probably get something from him Sunday.
Yeah. You can send, you can just send an email, or just, I'd like to be reappointed, that'd be fine.
Yep, so I'll be seeing him Sunday morning, so I'll see if I can get something in writing from him Sunday morning and get it to the town hall on Monday. So I guess those are still waiting on the future agenda, but they're out work in progress.
And for the Director of Emergency Management, the engineering board was going to make a recommendation. You know,
They don't meet till the end of the month. They don't meet till the end of the month.
So then if we put this on in January, it's likely we'll have a recommendation. Okay, that concludes the business, future agenda items, so it's those 3 appointments. The concerned citizen rules. Is there anything else?
I had thought of something, but we seem to be going along pretty good. Well, maybe we should put council rules on. I know when I was seeing before, we kind of went over some basic rules. It don't really matter to me one way or another. It seems like we're following Robert's Rules of Order.
Essentially.
And the only reason why I put that on there is, like, the question on not voting at all. I didn't know if that
We
was.
should adopt a set of rules. The last one we followed is a new democratic rules of order. You have one?
Yeah.
And it's a simplified Robert's Rules that they're using at colleges to teach democratic process, like Providence College that has a program. They use that. It's a little more simplified, so everybody can have it. And there's a book at the clerk's office, and I actually, out of my own pocket, what the council books last year.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow a copy of that. Just put that on, I would guess.
That's what we have.
Council rules?
Yeah, council rules. Customarily, every council I've seen in the last 6 years adopts a set of rules and guidelines.
Well, this is, okay, that's essentially what we're talking about tonight, so. Any other future agenda items?
Do we want to put the whole journal on so that we can discuss whether people add a future agenda item?
Okay.
So if people on the council approve of it.
FHJ, so they can give us feedback after they
Yes.
see it. FHJ, no feedback.
You do have Mr. Roy.
Oh,
Mr. Sabasio?
Yeah, really, a real concern, I think the council should discuss lighting or something on the days of voting.
Lighting.
Allow the Senate, for voting.
Okay.
and charter review.
Charter. We did talk about that.
Yes.
Okay, are there any other future agenda items?
Police station situation, we're gonna probably go through that at some point.
Yeah, we do have to, we do have to.
So if we put it on the agenda, it'll be facing us every meeting, so.
Have you hand up? Yes?
Yes, I did. I really do believe that the council should send a resolution to the Providence Journal as the main daily newspaper in the state of Rhode Island regarding the total lack of coverage that is provided regarding Foxborough events, and you could send us a letter to the editor so that Mr. Acorn's attention is gotten. It is very important to have an informed citizenry, and right now we have no public papers, as was stated earlier, that is fulfilling that job.
I did send them a letter in the past, which they never published and never responded to. But certainly
Formal
we can
resolution.
say it again, sure.
We have a little more weight perhaps.
Is there anything else? Okay. Then we need a motion to go into executive session. Who would like to read this motion to go into executive session?
Thank you, Mr. Steve.